good evening to all of you, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm so happy to welcome you all to this session on the final day of the 3 days of Sustainability Festival, the Thai Sustainability Summit, the largest summit hosted by Thai Hyderabad. Also very glad to share with you that we have had over 41,000 registrations for the event. And I must say it is a big feat for any organizer, and in this case, Thai Hyderabad. I am Smita Mishra, founder and CEO of Pandoro Technologies Private Limited. I'm very excited to introduce the topic for this session, sustainable housing, the sky is the limit. The session is going to focus on how the housing, real estate, construction industry is adopting sustainability and what kind of innovations are we looking at, particularly with respect to sustainable materials that's being used. We have put together an amazing spread of wonderful speakers from various expertise to discuss the subject. And I'm glad to announce that Mr. Vamsi Gadda has consented to moderate. Let me quickly introduce our esteemed moderator to you. A passionate young innovator and an entrepreneur, Mr. Vamsi Gadda is the Joint Managing Director of Visakha Industries Limited, a 40-year-old, 150 crores corporate. He has catalyzed the company's transformation to becoming one of India's leading sustainable building materials provider with the brand name VNext. He innovated Atom, an integrated solar roof, as an alternative to the conventional retrofit roofing and solar systems. This innovation is the first of its kind globally and has been patented as solar roof in India and South Africa. Besides leading Visakha Industries from the front, Vamsi is the founder of an EV startup called Atomobile. The Atom bikes are 100% made in India for roads that are uniquely Indian. The bike looks like a cafe racer and has received a design patent for its unique design amongst all e-bikes in India. Mr. Vamsi is a vocal advocate for adapting renewable and green consumption for a sustainable tomorrow. Known for his social responsibility and eco-conscious business approach, Vamsi also has a podcast called Vamcast, where he interviews like-minded changemakers. Vamsi aspires to promote green innovations that act as carbon offsets for the masses. Very glad to have you here, Vamsi. Please take over from here and introduce your panel. And I'm looking forward to an exciting and insightful session with you. And dear audience, we're glad to take your questions. Kindly ensure you share all your questions prior to 40 minutes into the session. Thank you all. Enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Smita, for giving the kind introduction and handing it over. And to begin with, I would like to introduce my panel first before we get into the main topic of discussion. We have with us a great panel. We have Ms. Esther, the Chief Sustainability Officer from City Developments. She is an active advocate for green building and sustainability for over 2 decades. Esther has been instrumental in establishing CDL's leadership in sustainability. It is ranked the top real estate company of 2021, a global most sustainable corporates in the world. It has become the first real estate conglomerate in Southeast Asia to win the world's Green Building Council's net zero carbon buildings in Feb of 2021. And the key ESG initiatives have been spearheaded by her in Singapore. And they've also issued the first green bond by any Singapore company in 2017, and building integrated sustainability reports since 2015. She's also a forerunner in embracing the UN SDGs. Esther was conferred 2018 SDG Pioneer for Green Infrastructure and Low Carbon Economy by the UN. She is also a signatory for the UNGC for the Climate Network and an executive council member for the UN SCAP Sustainable Business Networks. She sits on the board of various advisory platforms, and including the World Green Building Council, Global Reporting Initiative, and the GRESB Asian Real Estate Benchmark Committee. She also shares the Asia Pacific Real Estate Association Sustainability and ESG committees. And she's also the Vice Chairperson of the Singapore Institute of Directors ESG Committee. So a really long profile there. And thank you so much, Esther, for joining our esteemed panel for discussion today. Next, we have Mr. Mir Nasir Ali Khan. He is a postgraduate in business management with over 20 years of experience in construction and real estate. He is the promoter and managing director of MAC Projects Private Limited, a reputed construction company. MAC is a premier infrastructure housing development company with a vision and promise to deliver innovation and excellence in a broad variety of fields. He is also the director of Rushna Infrastructures Limited, one of the reputed construction companies promoted by Nasir, who is also the managing director there. So great to have you, Nasir, and thank you to be part of the TIE conference on sustainability. Next, we have Peter Bradfield. He is the technical advisor for wood products at Forestry Innovation Consulting India, based out of Mumbai. He was also previously the owner of Camilla Trading. We had a very interesting chat earlier, and Peter is, he has a lot of information and a lot of R&D that into the wood, recycled wood and wood-based products. So great to have you on the panel as well, Peter. So I think now that we've introduced, all the panel members, I would like to quickly share a brief of what we would like to discuss upon today. Each of our panel members are from different spaces. Mr. Nasir is from the construction background, so he's actually a developer of sorts. Peter is actually a technocrat in the sustainability area, and Esther, of course, as she's done great work in Singapore and around for spreading the SDG goals and getting things into practical implementation. So I think a great panel for the session today. And we want to touch upon how sustainability is impacting India and across the world, and what kind of measures are required to be more sustainable as a planet. So I will quickly reach out to Esther first and get to know her feedback and views on what the word sustainability actually means, because sustainability has taken different routes, and I think many businesses have made it a great marketing strategy to call themselves sustainable, but very few are actually sustainable. So I would like to hear, starting from Esther and the rest of the panel members, what sustainability means to you to kick the discussion off. Over to you, Esther.
Greeting from Singapore, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to share the panel with the distinguished, gentlemen here. I'm glad to add a little bit of gender balance to the panel. So, well, sustainability is really the top agenda. Almost every day, you read newspaper, social media. The word sustainability or global, warming and climate change don't appear. I'll buy you coffee and tea. Okay, so everyone is talking about sustainability. Yes, you're right. We are, even for us, I started my journey in the late 90s, and more than 2 decades now. And initially, nobody really talked to me because, even when I carried the title in 2014 officially, everybody was asking, what do you really do? What is a chief sustainability officer do, But today, of course, everybody is jumping on, wow, share with us your journey and all. And then I think for us, for sustainability, we started the journey really early, and started with the very simple objective is like building industry was not deemed very eco-friendly in the 90s. And let's see how we can turn it around, do something that it is, according to our ethos that we established in 1995 is how can we conserve as we construct? and manage our building. So as simple as that, started with a very simple, single-minded, objective. And today, of course, sustainability or relevant SDG, behind my backdrop here, are actually at the core of our ESG strategy. ESG stands for Environment, Social, and Governance. And the end objective is to deliver a balanced and healthy triple bottom line. Okay, we won't have healthy business or people without a healthy planet. So planets to us is always really top priority, and decarbonization and all those are very important, for a healthy planet. And people are very important, because without healthy people, and there won't be a market for businesses to make to maintain profitable. And as private property, we are
Esther, hello. I think we
Thank you.
lost. Esther, we lost last 30 seconds of what you were saying. If you would kindly repeat, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, my apology. So last but not least, I'm thinking that as a private business, we do need to maintain profitable in order to sustain, the business and employment for our, employees, and also support the value chain of business. And of course, obligation to return value to our investors and shareholders. So the triple bottom line, profit, people, and planets are most important. But the main challenge of businesses is, how do you maintain prosperity, not at the expense of the people and the planet? So I will elaborate a little bit more later on our business strategy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Esther, for that. And I'd like to hear from Nasir about his views on what sustainability means from a developer standpoint of view, please. Nasir, if you would unmute, please.
Thank you so much, Vamsi, for the kind introduction. I'm Nasir Ali Khan. I'm also the Consul General of Republic of Kazakhstan for Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and we're working very closely with the government in not just housing and power also, renewable power in a big way. Though Kazakhstan is one of the largest producer of oil and gas, but we are planning to shift to non-conventional energy. We have very big plants, and that can be discussed. Coming back to what we are doing, we have recently tied up with the FII, which is Forest Innovation Investment, Government of British Columbia, to do a pilot project in India on sustainable housing. And we're using wood as the material, sustainable material, because wood is biodegradable, recyclable, reusable, and more than anything else, it's carbon negative. And we have tied up with FII because British Columbia is one of the largest producer of timber, and it's sustainable, reliable, and legal source. Because when we are getting into sustainable housing, the most important part is sustainability and legality also. In wood, the challenge is, there's a lot of wood available, like Peter said, from Africa and other, which is not from sustainable forest. So, I can speak specific to India, because we are getting into this because we have more than just climate problems and more local problems. Like, we have to use a lot of water for curing, for concrete. And India has a water shortage, serious water shortage. We have just 4% of world water and 18% of world population. So there's not enough water for drinking and agriculture. Using water for concrete, I think it's not a great idea. So we are shifting to sustainable housing and dry construction. Another problem is sand. Singapore is the largest user of sand in the world, I was told, and sand is also a natural material. And these two are the materials which are used the maximum, natural materials. The highest is water, the second is sand, and these are not regulated. That's the problem with this industry. So from Indian context, I think we are looking at as alternate to concrete because of these two reasons also.
Great, Nasir. So we will come back to you more on the India initiatives that you've taken up. So moving on to Peter, if you would share what sustainability means from where you come from, and how the initiatives have been moving in that front, please.
Yes, sure. Well, specifically, I represent interest in Canadian wood from British Columbia. The key factor is, and we're promoting Canadian wood in India. We're a not-for-profit. We're promoting Canadian wood for manufacturing and for structural use. But the key thing is that that wood must come from a sustainably managed forest. And so sustainability means to be, good management of the forest, zero deforestation, which we've enjoyed zero deforestation in Canada for almost 30 years. There's no reason that won't continue. We do that by protecting a vast area of the forest, never to be commercially used, and then by logging less than 1% of the commercial forest. Despite all of the export and the usage of wood, we're still only logging 1% of our commercial forests. So that's a sustainable way to use timber. All the wood is certified, independently certified. It's legally logged, and of course, as Nasir said, the forest is absorbing CO2, it's storing CO2, and even in converting those logs to lumber, even though we do then give back some of that CO2. Once we produce the lumber, the CO2 is locked there for the life of the wood, so it can be locked in the wood for centuries, and then it can be recycled later. So this is a real life cycle, and it's a sustainable life cycle. So probably that sums up my background.
Great, Peter. Thank you. I think Ty has done a great job in getting the four of us together, because each of us come from completely different backgrounds. And I myself work on dry construction. We manufacture dry products. As I was discussing with Peter earlier as well, the whole effort should be on how to reduce the carbon emissions, right? The entire aspect of sustainability is how to reuse the products at hand, how best we can recycle, and how low to the minimum extent we can keep our carbon emissions during the whole journey of creating sustainable housing. So I would quickly want to hear from Esther about what kind of initiatives Singapore has been able to support in sustainable. Esther had wonderful things to say earlier about how the government has been very supportive of sustainable initiatives in Singapore to develop, to give seriousness to sustainable housing. So Esther, to you, please.
Well, I think the Singapore government in the first place, last July, have renamed the Ministry for the Environment to Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment. So that shows how serious the government is taking the lead to do so. And in February this year, we actually launched the Singapore Green Plan 2030, setting very key target and goals, not just managed by one ministry, but 5 ministries covering from trade and industry, and building industry, and Ministry of the Environment, educations, and all. So it is all multi-stakeholder, multi-ministries type of initiative, setting very, very stringent targets. Just to give you an example, that we have an 80-80 target for building sector here. 80% of all buildings in Singapore has to be Green Mark certified by 2030. And now we are at the 43% level. So the next 9 years or so, we have another 30% to chase to achieve that. That actually include all old and new buildings, including whether it is public building, even schools, hospitals, and the shop houses, etc. So for us, we are even looking at super low energy. So I think when we talk about global warming, carbon reduction, decarbonization is the top priority for us. And as a developer and a building owner, we have 3 deliverables that we set for ourselves. The first one is decarbonization. The second one is digitalization and innovation. That's how it helped to move the needle. The third one is disclosure and communication, because you need to track and report to your stakeholders and to see whether you are on track. Because when there are a lot of companies declaring that, oh, I'll pledge to net zero, we will have to look at it. Do you look at a global benchmark, or do you have a pathway? Do you have a tracking and reporting, robust system? You can't tell people that I will tell you 2030, then whether I can achieve it or not. So that's where sustainability reporting, ESG disclosure is so important. And that is also an agenda for sustainable, for stock exchanges worldwide. And everybody is, looking at the global race to zero. And today, global race to zero has already garnered the support of 136 countries, almost 800 cities, and then 4,500 businesses. All these members together, represent 50% of the whole global GDP and 25% of greenhouse gas emission. So this is really the largest alliance going to help the world and businesses to, to really race to the net zero goal.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Esther. I think a very valid point raised by you. I think there has to be a good support from the government and also the GRI reporting, right? The worldwide, I think people are paying attention to ESG companies, and reporting is such an important thing, because like Peter was saying, there are many use cases where there is no proper cultivation, there's no proper track of where the wood comes from, for example. And it's so important to ensure that the systems are followed to ensure that we are on the right track. And over to Nasir now. He had some wonderful thoughts on how, being a developer in India, the government support and the push. I would like to hear from him on his thoughts, please. Nasir, you're on mute again.
Sorry, Vamsi. That's a very important point and important thing for the industry to do well. And we need a lot of government support, not really in terms of funding, but like local Indian government, in terms of giving concession to the end user, not to the developer or not to the builder. Like, they have given similar concessions, the concessions to automobile industry. We are talking to government on those lines. So state government can help us on giving concession on building permit fee. They can also give us concessions on registration, property registration. And the third important thing is they can also give a concession on property tax. These are the incentives which we can expect. And we are already talking to them. They're very positive about it. And central government can help us give concession on GST. So if you give these concessions to the end user, it will attract a lot of people in investment in sustainable housing. And it will create awareness, because without the government support, it's not very easy to promote industry like this, because the reason is it's not going to be cheaper. Like Peter said, concrete is a great product, it's cheap, but the only thing is it has a lot of carbon emission. So to compete with a product which is good, end product is good and inexpensive, you need a lot of incentives for government. Otherwise, you can only have a very small market share, very niche market. Like the electric car, when it started, Tesla, people, HNIs were buying. The same thing will happen to, sustainable housing. It will start from people who are HNIs, then it will, with the government support, then it can become mass. Yeah, that's what we're working with the government, along with the Canadian government. So hopefully we'll get some concessions for the industry. We are not looking for any concession for the developer at all.
Great.
Yeah,
great. Thank you, Nasir. And over to Peter, please. If you would unmute and go ahead.
Well, Vamsi, congratulations, by the way, on your solar tiles. Fantastic.
Thank you.
We in India, Canadian government is very forward-thinking in export markets in general, not just India. But our latest venture in the last few years has been to zero in on the possibility of wood frame construction in India, because it's a sustainable way to build. We have all the credentials and all the information regarding timber's credentials, and building with wood has so many advantages. It's very fast. It creates much less disturbance to the footprint of the building. We're not using so much in the way of footings and concrete foundations. We're not disturbing the environment. We're not taking trees out. It's a very light footprint, let me say, and at the same time, wood is its strength to weight ratio means that it can compete easily with steel and concrete in many forms. And of course, there are innovations in wood these days in terms of engineered wood. So we have engineered products like glue laminated timber, cross laminated timber, all sorts of variations, in engineered wood, which allow you to use wood for longer spans, to imitate basically what we've previously done in steel. So all of these things can be done and done very fast, very efficiently. So we can probably build in wood in India maybe 5 or 6 or 7 times faster than we currently build in concrete and steel. So this is a big advantage, and it's certainly an eco-friendly approach and a carbon-friendly approach. So we're seeing a huge interest in what we're doing. We've already produced and built in conjunction with some other people some display homes across South India, in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Mysore, and now we're jointly doing a project here in Hyderabad with Mac Projects, a beautiful project. And for the first time, we'll be using some engineered products in that house.
Great. Thank you, Peter, for that. And I can't agree with all the panelists more. I think there needs to be good amount of awareness, first off, to begin with. And I want to, just share that with our industry inputs in terms of putting in dry construction, to add to what Nasir said, the whole point of using excessive sand, excessive concrete, and really increasing even steel, for that matter. Steel has almost 2 tons of carbon emissions for 1 ton of production, really. And that's really where the attention needs to go in terms of how renewable, how we can bring in recyclable products into the building industry to make housing, not just housing. I just want to take a little bit of liberty into spreading to any kind of building, for that matter, right? Commercial, industrial, or any sort of building. And with our product, like Peter was just sharing, we've pushed the drywall construction to almost 10 million square feet a month. That's what we're pushing in India and around India. And like what Nasir was saying, we do definitely need good support from the government in terms of how we can spread. But the consumer also is very important. And I want to move to that part of the discussion, where how can we influence the consumer? Nasir was saying HNIs are the first adopters, and then to the mass scale. And no initiative is successful unless it is at scale and is literally implemented across all regions and specifics. So Esther, to you, what do you think needs to be done in Singapore, in India, and globally, of course, in terms of making the end user aware? Because ultimately, each of us need to do our bit to bring about this whole change in sustainability. So over to you, Esther, please.
Well, of course, I think for businesses, we also have to look at the so-called business case. And along the value chain, everyone play a part. Regulators, we just talk about it, whether it is incentives or regulations or penalty, that works. Okay, so government. Then the next thing is like the investors, financiers, if you have responsible, lender, and then, giving incentives for green building, for example, that will also help to move, to the agenda. And of course, we work with architect, engineers, suppliers, and by the way, Peter, we will have a separate talk after that. Actually, I built the first academy, Sustainability Academy, using about 85% cross-laminated timber and glulam as well. So it is also certified by Nature Barcode. And you are very right that it took us only a few months to put them together. And of course, we combined with prefabricated technology and make it really fast and also eco-friendly. We can talk about it, and we do look for, alternative source as well. But having said that, wood it's still in the early stages. You can count in the one hand how many, wooden building that we have. We have the honors to use to build the first one, which is still single story. And for multi-story, we have a Singapore Management University. They just finished the School of Law. I think it is about 10 story at the most, and using MET. And I think Nasir is right that we use a lot of, building materials, and the top that we are using is actually, of course, concrete, sand included, and then second is actually steel. So we have been really, over the years, we've been moving towards, like, for example, we look at green concrete, we look at even hempcrete for one of our gallery, which is also a eco-based, materials. But a lot of these needs times to pilot, to test it, and even for wood also, how does it, apply to a tropical country like ours? Almost every day you have rain, you have sun, and we have a deck that using wood, and then it didn't last us for 2 years. It, the trip, and then it was quite challenging. But the cross-laminated timber, the materials that we have used, it is quite lasting, and we are still testing it. We built it in June 2017. We opened the gallery, the academy. We can share with you, separately. And of course, we look at steel. But the recycled steels are increasingly more available now. And of course, when we talk about decarbonization, embodied carbon, the main big ticket item is from sustainable materials. So, but we need to educate the supplier. 5 years ago, when I talked to our biggest concrete supplier, when I talk about sustainable concrete or material, they look at you like, don't know what you're talking about. But today, the knowledge is much, much higher. And I believe that in the years ahead, we are going to really, move a lot faster. Like when we first started CLT, cross-laminated timber, a lot of people also didn't know that. 2016, it was like we started using it, and it was very few suppliers even available in Singapore here. So Peter, let's talk.
So thank you for that, and over to Nasir, please, to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely right, Vamsi. Like, you have to make it popular, you have to make it masses to get the benefit. Customers, very important consumer at the end of the day. And apart from housing, like you said, you have to look at other buildings also, like hospitals, school buildings, because wood is good for learning. Recovery rates are higher in wood building because wood is nature. And public buildings is very important. Actually, you can do a lot in public buildings, which is being done over. I was told in New Zealand, up to 4 floors of government buildings have to be necessarily be in wood in New Zealand, and in France, they're going to have 50% of government buildings have to be in wood. So that is one place where government can contribute to make it mass. And coming back to residential housing, I think people will, as they get to know the benefits of wood, it's in the short term, it's a little expensive, but I think there are a lot of long-term benefits of wood, not just from the point of view of carbon emission, energy savings also. Wood is very good with the weather, heating, cooling, and all that. And I was told in North America, 32% of the energy is used for heating and cooling. So you're very right. I know you just have to make it popular and go to various areas, not just look at housing. We are also talking to various agents trying to promote with the government, and government is very positive because governments in other countries, because of this agreement, they have signed the Paris Accord. They're looking, like you said, Vamsi, each one of us have to be contribute. It's not just can't say only oil industry or coal industry and all that. It won't happen. You're very right in saying that everyone is responsible, and also very right in saying that you have to make it mass. You have to make in all areas, not just housing. You have to look at all areas, including public buildings, hotels, hospitals. There's a lot of wood is being used in resorts for a long time. Peter will be able to explain on that. That's my thought on how to make it more popular.
Thank you, Nasir. So yeah, over to Peter, please.
Yes, thanks, Vamsi. So yeah, reaching the market's critical. There's a lot of skepticism out there regarding using timber. Is it strong enough? What about the rain and the termites and all of these issues that must be addressed? So we spend a lot of time in education and training. Not just one-on-one, but group sessions, webinars. We have events. We'll get 60 architects in a room and give presentations. Prior to COVID, we're doing that a lot. So it is a process, and slowly but surely, the message is out there, is getting out there. And it's challenging in tropical climates such as Singapore and in India. In India, we have so many different climatic conditions, microclimates everywhere. So there's an education required in terms of how to properly store wood, how to use wood. in terms of joinery and doors and windows and construction. So it's a process, but it means an investment in education and training. And this is what we're doing every day.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And I just want to touch a little bit on what, Esther and Nasir and Peter have shared in terms of, being realistic and practical, right? We may have great ideas, like we've explored on different materials. I myself am part of the journey to try to find the right mix of what kind of product will be, sustainable and practical to go at scale. And we've been very, enthusiastic about using recycled materials. So our product actually fits in exactly what Esther says. We use, fly ash, we use recycled pulps, we use, green concrete. So all this effort goes into making a product. That's as far as R&D is concerned. And then, of course, taking it to market, with the help of developers like CDL and MAC, in terms of how can developers use sustainable materials that, I would like to join Peter's boat in terms of saying, okay, we are coming from the R&D and product development point of view, in terms of, making sure we get the right LCA, making sure we get the right amount of sustainability, because like Peter rightly said, for coastal climates, if we end up doing treatments on the wood for termites or anything else, there may be a plus and minus that we need to look at. So all these are very important for building a sustainable future, and that too at scale, of course. And looking at how to do net zero. I want to move towards net zero, because I had earlier had a discussion with my panel, and they had some interesting thoughts on net zero buildings. And net zero buildings are very close to me, because I'm from the solar fraternity as well, in terms of how can we, loop in, from my angle, sustainability is how self-reliant and sustainable can we be without depleting the natural resources. And solar, for now, seems to be one such option, where we've managed to create net zero buildings. So in fact, most of our factories that we manufacture, they're heavily dependent on solar. Our solar product is net zero. We don't even take a single unit from the electricity board because of this type of thought process. So Esther, if you could share what your thoughts are on the whole concept of how we can make sustainable housing net zero, that would be nice.
Well, it may not be just housing. It's I would just talk about just in general green building and super low energy and towards net zero. Yes, we have pledged for net zero by 2030 for 13 of our assets that are under our direct control and management. And I think what we need to look at is the whole life cycle approach. When we build, is Singapore is actually heating up twice as fast as other part of the world. So thermal comfort, keeping the thermal temperature comfortable for users, whether it is residents or our tenants, are very, very important. So using AI and digital technology, we actually have already used for some of our newer development that actually has proven that it can help us to reduce heat gain by 20%. How you design and how you orientate your building, by simulation and all that, actually will help you upfront to decide your building orientation. And of course, the design itself, how to maximize your cross ventilation. Okay, maximizing the use of wind and use the sunlight and all that, and definitely for how we have to use energy no matter what. So energy efficiency is very important right from the start. And how do you generate it on site is important. But mind you, Singapore is actually RE challenged country because we have we're very small. We are not like India, really huge and fantastic, land. We are very land scarce, and according to UN level, we are RE challenged because we just don't have enough land for solar panel. And then for solar energy, is still the most promising in Singapore now. As compared to hydro or wind. We don't hardly have wind because our building are also built up. We won't have enough wind power for that. So solar is very important, and we have started using solar panels since early 2000. Using solar to power one of our condominiums clubhouse. So that is how we started, and then we expanded to the whole condominium, the rooftop, and also our net zero building at our academy I talk about. So it's not easy at all, because although Singapore have a lot of sun, it also have a lot of cloud and rain, almost like half. So it all talking about harvest, the yield. You guys are expert in solar panel. But now, because of the challenge, we are also looking a lot of opportunities that the government is also, looking into the connecting the grid with Malaysia, or, even Laos. We can tap onto the RE there. And we have some offshore solar plant as well. So when there's challenge, there are always new way of doing things. Solar is always our top priority. And how do we look for solar panels that are really, create the most, highest effectiveness, and also BIPV, because we don't have enough land. We have to look at facade, integration. So building integrated PV is one of our big thing, and we have already started a pilot with, bifacial BIPV panel for about a year, and we have to test the viability, and also make it look prettier. It's like, can you imagine if your building have like pretty, solar panels that have, can print even advertising message and all that? That will really expand the adoption of solar panel. So we are looking at all sort of, solutions. Yeah. So I hope one day we can have a discussion, Vamsi. Yeah.
Thank you, Esther. I have something interesting to say, but I will move on to Nasir, and I'll definitely share my thoughts on what you've shared with us. Nasir, you had very interesting points on zero discharge buildings, which we were talking about earlier. If you could share with us your thoughts on that, please. And please unmute, Nasir.
Like you said, it's not just sustainable material. You also have to manage your other resources. Like Esther said, you need power. And solar is the best option as of now. I mean, it's done a wonderful job. India is doing extremely well in solar. One of the largest producers of solar power in the world is in India, Adani. And the players like you are contributing a lot. And the other one is how you manage your discharge. You have in a sustainable building also, you have a discharge, you have a sewerage, you have your water and all that. That should be a zero discharge. We have a system in our project, and where we are doing this sustainable housing, we will have a zero discharge. So we will be reusing the entire water for different purposes, mostly for gardening and flushing, and also solid waste for manure and all that. So zero discharge is also very important. It's not just you use sustainable and use power which is not sustainable, and use not reuse your discharge. So I agree with all the panelists, Esther and all that. You just not have sustainable building material. You have to manage your power. The building has to be green, not just not just housing, any building for that matter. So I think Peter will be able to add more to this topic. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Peter, please.
Yes, thanks, Vamsi. So net zero, I mean, let's face it, net zero is all about design, right? It starts with design, then we have to think about materials, as Esther said. We have to think about orientation. We have to think about airflows. We have to think about energy consumption. It's not just, you can't just say, well, use timber, and you'll get so many leads points in your project. It's a combination of everything that has to sort of work well together, and in order to achieve this net zero. So it's a wonderful aspiration. It's not easy to achieve, but we're working towards it. And again, it's about creating awareness. It's about motivating people to want to build in this way. probably not, in the single family homes. And maybe it could start with single family homes. I'm not sure, rather than large structures, commercial structures. But definitely we're starting, and the awareness is growing. And I think that's the really key thing. And if you motivate people to go down that track, and I think, a business like yours, that's exactly doing that. And then if you can also sort of educate people about the benefits of using sustainable materials like timber from well-managed forests, it's a combination of things. It's I think one thing we have to do in India, which we are doing, you have to build something so that people can touch and feel it and experience it, and only when they actually see that finished timber building and go inside and experience it and understand how that HVAC system works and how energy efficient it is and how cool it might be there inside on a hot day. You don't appreciate these things, you actually build it. So this is what we're focused on doing, and it's working well for us.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And I just want to comment on what Esther shared, which is, very, very practical and related to me. I almost felt like you were directing everything what you were saying to me in terms of, Singapore's use of solar. In fact, that's really what we've come up with as a solution in solar, where we've addressed a problem where traditional solar goes and sits on top of rooftops, where we try to maximize the use of solar generation, because land is always not available, especially in a place like Singapore. And even in cases where land is available, like China and India, we are seeing huge power problems, because setting up huge amounts of power generation in one location again leads to transportation issues, the breakdowns, what we are experiencing in China, also the imbalance of sustainable power versus traditional. And that's really our innovation, Esther. Actually, we fused solar into the roof itself. So there's really one product where even the use of two materials, right, coming to sustainable housing, like what Nasir was saying, we're so specific in what type of products are used and how many products are used. So really to reduce the number of products that are used also in a building is very important. And that's what we've done. Ours actually comes under a BIPV category. And we actually achieve 40% more power than the traditional solar systems. And that is really what we've done. And India, just to share with Nasir, India is, this product category didn't exist 2 years ago before we developed it, innovated it. And within the first 2 years, we've done almost close to now about 20-25 crores of business only in rooftop applications. And facades, like you said, Esther, to make it look pretty, right? I mean, nobody wants to look at retrofit solar modules. So there are technologies coming up, but again, everything comes at a cost. The more prettier and beautiful you want a building to look, I think Nasir will agree with me. Some amount of cost escalation is bound to happen. But I think the point is taken from all the panelists, where we need to be conscious of the kind of products that we use, and not just for the sake of using. It has to have a real meaning and a value addition to sustainability in terms of what we are trying to do. I think all the panelists have given great thoughts on various aspects of it. I want to ask one last question to hear comments from each of you, then we can head to close. Is what type of challenges you foresee going forward, in this space of sustainability, and what you think can be a good solution or a suggestion from your end, just so that our audience can probe and we can probe their mind to just think on different solutions people may come up with to the problems that we are facing today.
Okay, shall I start first? Yeah, okay. Well, two big challenges. One is about the business case. Okay, everybody was saying that green building is more expensive when we started about almost 20 years ago. And today, the cost of inaction will be higher than the cost of investing into green. okay, because you have carbon tax, you have, you know, a lot of regulation coming your way. So we don't look at it as cost anymore, especially for investment building where we collect rent and all. For housing, it's a bit different. Once I hand over the key to the owner, whatever saving go to the pocket of the owner. And that also helps us to market our green home, you know, in a more sustainable way, look beyond today that, you know, the so-called premium. But to tell you the truth, we have built 20 years already for green home. The time for owner residents to actually share the cost, the premium, is coming soon, but it hasn't happened yet. So we hope it will happen soon, especially now the awareness of, you know, fighting climate change is so high. So the green consumerism is on the rise, especially for younger buyers. So this is point one that have hope. Then point two is about, you know, users' behavior. Tenants is very important because, you know, they are the biggest user of our commercial property. So we actually launched the first the green lease in 2014. At that time, only 60% participation. By 2017, we have 100% green lease participations. And today, nobody opts out. And we make it a mandatory requirement. You want to, you know, lease a space from our properties, you have to adopt the green lease that we have, like what are the, you know, materials you should use, you know, LED light, energy efficiency fittings, and what sort of building materials you should use to retrofit your premises. So all these will come together. It's about, you know, the business case. It's about the people's will. When the two come together, it will be powerful enough to drive change. But it is still, you know, at a stage that we need to step up. Otherwise, we have about 9 years to go to really hit the targets. Yeah, but I think things are moving much faster than 10 years or 20 years ago. Yeah, I am very hopeful for the change, especially with very passionate and creative, you know, innovators like, you know, all this in the building sector. I'm sure, you know, we will make progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Nasir, please.
There's a huge demand, what I've seen, you know, of late for housing, sustainable housing, and especially housing in bold. We've been getting a lot of inquiries, but the challenge, what I see in India, especially because I'm in India, this availability of material is a very big challenge because locally wood is banned in India. So you don't have local wood, you have to import and sustainable sources. That's a big challenge, actually. Luckily for us, we have a joint venture with the government of British Columbia. They're supplying the material. That solution is solved for us, but for a lot of people, material is a big challenge. That's what I see. Other challenge in India is availability of skilled manpower to do wood housing, because this is a different technology. It's not like concrete, because every species of wood has a different strength, a different weight, and different uses. So we don't have much skilled trained manpower in India. These are the two challenges I think we'll face in the long run. We are trying to send our people to Canada to train and all that, but local governments also, we're talking to local governments to train people in this wood technology. Even FII is doing their bit, but we are also talking to some of the government agencies to do skill development in wood tech. These are the two challenges, I think. One is availability of manpower and material. Thank you, Vamsi.
Thank you.
Add on that.
Thank you. Peter, please.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so just to follow on from what Esther and Nasir were saying, I think, yes, there is resistance to paying a little more in the first instance for sustainable materials over and above what people are used to. You know, I think we have to encourage people to actually think about the installed cost, the long-term cost, the savings the energy savings, you know, and other savings that are there. By using sustainable materials. And that means we create awareness. We have to educate the younger generation. We need to start in the high schools, in the school system, in the university system. And I think there's a real open mindedness. Young people are passionate about saving the planet, let's face it. So, you know, if we can give viable solutions and offer them alternatives to what we're currently doing, I think they will be embraced. It takes a little time. There is that hurdle of initial cost. You know, we have to think about it in a different way. And of course, you know, with a new technology in a country like India, you know, training carpenters. We have wonderful carpenters, but, you know, not so much involved in structural construction. But certainly people can be trained, carpenters can be upgraded, and awareness can be increased here, so that I'm sure that we'll overcome these issues as time goes by, and probably sooner rather than later. It's important.
Thank you, Peter, for that. And I would just like to add that what we are talking about really is behavioral change, right? How can we bring about the mindset change? How can we bring about the behavioral change? And it can't just happen with one category of the industry. It has to be a through and through support, right from government, as Nasir was sharing earlier, right from enforcement of sustainable actions to practicality of it. Like you said, we can't move to sustainability if you have to depend heavily on imports, if you have difficulty in having trained manpower. So that's a lot of effort that needs to go in. I can share the pain there, Nasir. We keep doing continuous carpenter meets, educational meets. It's a part of process and life for us, and I only pray that more people enter that space. And just a small message to wrap it all up. I would like to thank all the panel members for their great insights. It's been a great learning for me personally, having a chat with all of you. The amount of knowledge that you all have shared with our viewers today, I think is a great insight that we could give to the viewers. And especially from my side, I come from a family business. We do about 150 million USD in revenues. And I had the sustainability drive somehow because of what's been going on around. And in parts of that, in terms of the entrepreneur within me, have about a couple of startups focused on sustainability. And I would like to just share with all the startup entrepreneurs watching, there's always a great journey and a scope. We need to find what best value we can add in terms of our whole focus in terms of sustainability. That's how I got into building integrated atom roof, and then electric vehicles also later on, trying to create an ecosystem. Thank you so much to all the panelists. It's been a great opportunity for me. And thank you, Ty, for organizing this beautiful session. So thank you, everybody. Namaste.